Do we have it now?
Yeah, we can start.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Today is our executive meeting, November 4th. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And do we need to take roll, Todd, or are we good?
I think we can pull it from the record, so we're good.
Okay. Item number 2 is vote on the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 3 is approval on the meeting minutes from the October 7th meeting. Any discussion about that?
Move. McCoy.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 3 is consent and vote on contracts and expenses. And I think, Todd, you're going to give us an update on the one that we've got.
Yeah, this is a project that was approved previously for a planning study by West Des Moines on the University Avenue corridor. It was awarded $100,000. They've made a request to be reimbursed for $20,178.40. We would recommend approval.
I'd move it. McCoy.
Second.
All
Aye.
Aye.
opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 5 is report on the calendar year 2021 meeting dates. Todd?
Yeah, just our annual swing at the meeting dates for all our committees. Tech approved theirs last week. This shows the meetings for exec and policy. There's 3 dates for policy that don't have a meeting, March, July, and December. Otherwise, it follows their typical calendar. Recommend approval.
Okay. And I think one of them was the May 12th that might have to get altered if we go on the, if the partnership trip is that time,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yeah, that'd be that week. But since we didn't know for sure which way that was going, we
Yeah.
just left it.
Yep, perfect. Any other discussion?
Motion to approve.
Second. McCoy.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 6 is report and vote on the fiscal year 2021-2024 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment. Shiroshi.
Yes, thank you. We have received a TIP amendment request from the Iowa DOT. The project is US Highway 6 project from Hickman to Douglas Avenue. The amendment request is to modify the federal aid amount from $431,200 to $587,200. There are no other changes to the project. The modification is as a result of a low estimate in programming. And so now that's being updated. With that, staff is supportive of the amendment request from the DOT. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time. Otherwise, we're seeking your approval. Thank you.
Any questions? I hear none. It is a voting item. I would entertain a motion.
So moved. McCoy.
Second. Riva.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 7 is report and vote on the Iowa DOT mid-performance period adjustments. Z, I think, is going to give us an update on that.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, so just some background on the mid-performance period adjustments. As part of the MAP 21 Act, Congress requires state DOTs and MPOs to establish targets for performance measures. So in 2018, the Iowa DOT established their 2-year and 4-year targets. The Des Moines area MPO supported these targets back then. Now in 2020, the Iowa DOT is in the middle of their 4-year performance period. This is known as the mid-performance period. And during this period, state DOTs can review and adjust their targets. Next slide. So with new data available to the DOT is now adjusting their 4-year interstate and truck travel time targets. The interstate reliability target was originally 99.5, and they are adjusting it to 98.5. And the truck travel time reliability measure was originally 1.14, and they are now adjusting it to 1.21. I'll be happy to take any questions you might have on these adjustments. Otherwise, staff recommends approval of the DOT's adjusted targets.
Z, thank you. Is there any questions? I hear none. This is a voting item.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 8 is a report on the fiscal year 2021 first quarter financial report from Dylan.
Thank you. So this is the first quarter budget report. So the ending September, where we're at budget-wise. If you go to the next slide, you can see, and in the packet, you can see where we're at, just the various categories that we have. And for most everything, we're where we should be or ahead, just due to COVID and not being in the office and stuff like that. That's saving us some money in a few categories. Nothing really to point out as an issue or any concerns. If you go to the next slide too, there's a couple of the grant pass-throughs that we have as well, just to see where those are at. So it's the build grants and the University Avenue Corps that we just discussed, or you just approved the amount for. We're still have quite a bit to expend on those projects as well. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, this is just for your information. Nothing we need to do with it. Just let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions for Dylan? All right. Item number 9 is a report on an environmental justice report. Allison, I believe, is going to give us an update on that.
Yes, thank you. So as you can see here, there's just a snippet of the draft right there on the right for you. We obviously put the EJ report together to identify where high concentrations of traditionally underserved populations are. We are federally mandated to incorporate this into our planning process through the Civil Rights Act. Next slide, please. And here, usually I just put up the current year for the top graph, or for the top table there, but I wanted to show the 2018 to 2020 changes. There really aren't many drastic changes, within 0.5% to 1%. The one that does pop up to the percent is the households with persons over 65, which is not unexpected. We continue to expect this to be a trend going into the future. And then there on the bottom, you can see the breakup of the stratification of the degrees of disadvantage that we spoke about in September. So the 0, the 1 to 3, the 4 to 5, and then the 6 to 7 there. Next slide. And then this is just that visual map, so you can see how these break out. So on the left here, you can see the breakdown of where each degree of disadvantage, so each census tract is labeled with how many degrees of disadvantage they have over the regional average for this 5-year period. And then on the right here, you can see the breakdown of what actually is deemed an environmental justice area. So as we discussed in September, we did 4 to 5 degrees of disadvantage would be of moderate concern, and then 6 to 7 would be of highest concern, 6 to 7 being the purple there in the urban core where we have seen it historically. The 4 to 5 is moving north and west a little bit. You can see that parts of Johnston have entered the envelope there, but again, these do follow the trend of multifamily housing units. And so ground truthing that found that those areas have had a number of apartment buildings and things like that go up in the last couple of years. So with that, I would put that out and take any feedback you might have.
Allison, thank you. I can open it up to the floor first. I do have some questions and concerns, but maybe I'll let everybody jump in first if anyone has anything. So
I'm
Allison,
not on video. I'm just on phone.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Joe, can you hear me? I just want to make sure because
Yep.
I am in the car. I apologize.
Yep.
Allison, I think the report is really thorough, and it was beneficial for me to kind of see the actual impact of these categories. That said, I think we're still off track, and I know the MPO staff and the people that have been on the executive committee the last 5 years with me know that I talk about this a couple of times a year. I believe strongly, and especially in a year like this where we've had, economic and racial strife. The Des Moines City Council has had issues of mobility with people with disabilities. I just think we have to get this right, and I think there's still work to do. I don't like the categories being based on percentile. I don't like somebody that's 51 percentile in one category being deemed disadvantaged. And I also don't like including age. I look around at groups and constituencies, and even the map would say that there's a lot of areas where the only disadvantage is age. And I'm not quite sure of it. I teased Joe yesterday that, the Des Moines City Council would be economically an economic justice area because of the age of the people on it. And I just don't buy that. And I think we serve our residents better by being focused on the most important issues that are economic justice issues. And by the way, I know Joe is going to say this because, he and I have talked about it, but in everything I read from the Department of Transportation, it never includes age as an issue of that we have to consider. So I would make 2 strong changes to it, and I'd love to think that today's discussion would cause us to work more on it, and I can offer more thoughts in writing if that's the direction the executive committee wants to go. Not that I have to prevail, but I don't want to take all the time diving into numbers over the phone.
Chris, thank you. Anybody else? I'd just like to echo some of those comments, and we've had some discussion, and obviously we've had this discussion the last time it was brought up in September, and I almost think that we need to take a real good look and maybe form a committee, Todd, with, I can help assign some people. Maybe we can get a couple people off the tech and a couple people off the funding committee and some other folks to be involved. But this is something that we need to get right. And with the Iowa DOT and looking at their definition, age is not anywhere in there. And I think that we add a lot of areas that probably isn't a lot of the underserved areas, what this is supposed to impact. And so I've really caused concern. So I would like to set up a committee of some sort, and I can work with Todd, and I'll work with Vice Chair McCoy and others to figure out who we can put on here and to be able to get this right before we submit anything like this.
That's fine, Joe. We can certainly set up the committee to go through this in more detail. I would just offer that, our personal transportation plan that the DOT requires us to do requires us to look at elderly transportation issues. That's where that age issue comes in, along with poverty and disability. So, but we can certainly go through what the requirements are and in more detail and with the committee and work through those issues.
Absolutely. Okay.
I would just echo, like Todd said, the passenger transportation plan, which will be updated again in 2022, This directly impacts that, and that's one of the main reasons that this is in there, because through the passenger transportation plan, we work to connect the dots between those who cannot drive, and a lot of those sit within that over 65 category. And I would agree, 60 is the new 40, and 60 does not look like what it used to. However, there are a large tract of the population where 60 does look like 60 through because they've been in labor positions and things like that. And so I'd be happy to work with the committee to discuss it. We have brought this through the planning committee and worked with them in September, and then have taken it through the Environment Roundtable, the Transportation Advisory Group that advises on the passenger transportation plan, and then brought this to you all in September as well. So happy to work with
and we've had the same discussion in September, and I probably should have brought it up then, but as we go forward, I just want to make sure that we get this in particular correct, because we've had the same discussion each and every time as we sit at the exec, and I think it's best to involve some of us that I understand elderly 65, but there's a difference between someone that's 65 living off a different income than there is living off of an income in different parts of the city where we see levels 6 and 7, and how much are we actually spending in 6 and 7 of the Iowa DOT money would be a concern of mine. So Todd, we can connect.
Yep.
Maybe you and I and Matt can get together, and Allison, and put something together, and then we can bring it back first of the year and figure out how we can make sure that we have it right, I guess is what my main intention would be.
Sure.
Joe,
Okay.
this is Bob. I agree fully with what you and Chris said. And from a funding subcommittee standpoint, I'd be happy to be part of that too. So.
Okay. I just appreciate it. I just want to get it right. We've had this discussion and we've never really acted on it, but I believe there's consensus that I think some things need to change on some of this, and we'll go through it and we'll see what we can come up with.
Sounds good, Joe.
All right. If anybody else has anything, if not, we can move on to item number 10. Item number 10 is a report on the rain campaign update from Allison.
Thank you. Thank you, Gunnar. So just a reminder that the rain campaign was funded through a Section 319 grant from the US EPA through the Iowa DNR, and it specifically outlines this program to look at the implementation of best management practices for stormwater and watershed management, specifically public information and education programs. And so obviously, now we're almost 2 years into the rain campaign, and so we deemed it that and decided to focus on local cost share programs and the practices that are best fitted to an urban environment. Next slide. So just on the right there, you'll see some of the tools that we originally put together for the 4 goals on the left. One was simplifying in order to help build successful programs. There was a lot of confusion, and so that first one there on the top left is a flow chart for any city resident to look and see where they live, and then see how the process goes into and how they can get the funding and access to that. Then we also obviously have an array of marketing materials that have been made available to each of your cities. The box is still open, and I know that many cities are still using them in some social media posts. And then we had the public art. So the big umbrella there and the big raincoat there and the little umbrella to pique people's interest through experiential tools, and then the social indicators. While we kept getting rained out, ironically, during fall of 2019 when we kicked off, we did have a goal of 50, and we did exceed that by 1. It was a very soggy fall, if you'll remember, just last year, which feels like forever ago, but we did exceed that goal. And so throughout that winter, we started working on how we can better manage this program. Next slide. So when we're looking at 2020, obviously a lot of things have adapted this year. We learned a lot through fall of 2019, and we were presented with the current circumstances we have on now. One thing that we learned is we needed one central information hub, and so we created raincampaign.org. I highly recommend you go check it out. It's a very attractive and informative website that has got a lot of traction, and we got a lot of inquiries and are able to point people in the direction of where they need to go instead of pointing to 19 different city websites. And we also diversified our tools. So we have these large public art pieces, which was one of the centerpieces of the RAIN campaign's effort. However, with RAIN last fall and then COVID this year, we have only been able to get our artwork out 3 times. And so this has hindered that process. And so we've had to diversify and see how we can better engage people from in the current circumstances that we're in. So we've created bill stuffers for the Des Moines Waterworks. We have created the Quarantine 12-pack last spring. Last a lot of people were out working in their yards. And so we worked with a local plant dealer who helped us create the Quarantine 12-pack where people could order a 12-pack of native plants and have them directly shipped to their home and be able to put in the ground. And really all of this is to say, we wanted to make sure that we were simplifying some of the programs and simplifying our outreach. We had to be able to be adaptable during these times. And luckily our team of 5 people has been able to do that. So spring 2020, we had a goal of 100 installations and we had hit 159. We also, with the Quarantine 12-pack, sold over 200 boxes of native landscaping plants across central Iowa and mostly focused in the Des Moines region. A couple more things that happened. West Des Moines brought on a new program, so we're really excited about that. We've also been approached by the city of Polk City to talk about a neighborhood approach in some of their newer developments, how a neighborhood can come together and do some of these practices instead of hodgepodging it together. So we're working with them on that. And then Waukee also expanded their program and updated it to the needs of the community as well. Next slide. So why do I tell you this? So our original funding cycle was a 1-year pilot program to determine how we can create a pilot program to promote these practices across the state. We got another year added on to that, and so we're still on that funding cycle, which ends next spring. And so we're starting to think, okay, after 2019 getting rained out, after 2020, we've learned how to be flexible. So what do we want the RAIN campaign to be as it moves forward into 2021 and as it moves on its own as a sustainable program without the EPA and DNR funding? So some of the things that we do already have on the docket while we have the funding available are some soil quality restoration giveaways. Windsor Heights did a couple last spring and they were really popular on social media. We're also doing more trainings with not only city staff, but also the contractors who are implementing these practices, because we find if people have large problems, then they're deterred and it all goes offline. And so we've put together a rain garden training as well as a virtual tour so people can see it at home and also experience it. We're also looking to expand outside the metro. We have had inquiries from the city of Ames, we've had inquiries from the city of Cedar Rapids and other communities across the state that have seen the RAIN campaign success in our tools and would like to incorporate them into their work, which is exactly what the DNR wanted. So we're excited to take this outside the metro and start helping other areas utilize these same kind of ideas and techniques and craft them for their own metro. The planning team originally really wanted to put a homeowner's guide to stormwater management on your at-home manual together. However, we're just a small team of 5 who do this as a side thing. And so we are working with the Iowa Stormwater Education Partnership, and they have decided to take the lead on putting together a manual like that. So we will be coordinating with them and advising on that. But really, the planning team wants to keep this flexibility to adapt. You know, we are a small band of brothers, and so we have been able to be agile. When we need to move on something quickly, we've been able to do that. And so we like that we've built that flexibility, and we hope to continue that in the future. And the last thing I'll just say is that after these 2 years, again, we've learned a lot of lessons. And so we'll be re-engaging city staff from across the metro to discuss what they'd like to see from the RAIN campaign as it moves forward. During the discussions during the Watershed Management Authority meetings in October, some folks mentioned maybe a sustainable funding model, recurring plant sales, maybe mapping some of the best management practices that are on private property so people can see that more. And so we'll be pulling these city staff together, hopefully before Thanksgiving to have this discussion and see how we can better prepare the cities and the rain campaign for the future. So with that, that's my update. I'd be happy to take any questions you have at this time.
Allison, thank you. Any questions for Allison? All right, I hear none. I'll move on to item number 11 is a report on the transload facility, an update from Zach.
Yes, want to give you a quick update on the status of where we're at with the transload facility. October through December, there's a number of documents that were required to get into the FRA. The first one was a baseline performance report. The deadline for that was September 30th. That has been submitted and accepted by the FRA. We also had our first quarterly report that we submitted a few days before October 30th, which was the deadline for that report, which basically just kind of outlines any kind of federal funding that has been spent on the project and updates on the status of what various different activities have been done regarding the project. That quarterly report just covered the month of September, so it was pretty basic. It didn't really have a lot in it, considering that we haven't started asking for any reimbursements yet. Last month, we discussed the disadvantaged business enterprise plan briefly, but the deadline for that was November 1st. We submitted that ahead of deadline, and it's been approved by the FRA. A copy of that document is provided in your agenda packet. Finally, we have a couple more documents that are coming up due at the end of the month, a deadline of November 30th. It's a project management plan and the detailed work plan. Both of these are in draft form right now. We're anticipating that we'll have these drafts done by the end of this week and submitted to the FRA for review. They've indicated that it might take them a couple of days to review it, provide us with some comments, and then we can address any comments they have in the final drafts of those documents. But we anticipate submitting both of those documents well before the November 30th deadline. The key to the work plan is that essentially Des Moines Industrial can't request any reimbursements until that work plan has been approved. So we want to get that plan approved as soon as possible. However, Des Moines Industrial has indicated that they really don't plan on asking for any reimbursements through the build grant until after January 1 of this next year. Des Moines Industrial is still intending to get on the ground this year and do some groundwork prior to the beginning of the year. So they're working through some of the City of Des Moines processes to get across the finish line as far as purchasing the property. And once they do that, they do plan on getting some groundwork accomplished this year. So that's essentially where we're at with the transload facility. Everything right now is right on schedule. We're getting our documents into the FRA ahead, if not on the deadlines when they're required to get in. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Zach, appreciate it. Any questions? All right, we'll move on to item 12. It's a report on the Purple Heart Highway. Todd.
Thank you. Quick update. The draft was completed last month after looking at comments from us and from the DOT. The overall conclusions were essentially the same as back in 2012, but the big significant thing was the costs have come down considerably from 2012. Couple of the big comments that the DOT wanted addressed was where the farm gates were actually located at, and this display here shows the red dots are the farm gates. A number of them don't look like they're in use anymore, so there's a potential to close those off. The kind of red hatched area is where there's some geometric deficiencies that we would need to get design exemptions for and doing an interstate designation. Go ahead. This table shows the cost, basically if we had to take care of all those design deficiencies, and that was what was shown in the 2012 report, about $35 million in cost. Next slide. But once we refine that and take out those design exemptions, a lot of them don't, those criteria aren't in place anymore. The design manuals have changed. So we get away from those. There's a couple things that we might have to do. But you can see the costs have come down to a little over $1 million, basically the updated of the signage and some alternate access to those farm gates when they're completely closed, if they're still needed, basically gravel roads. So next steps would be for the MPO to make a request to the DOT for interstate designation. The DOT would then forward that request to Federal Highway. Some things that are needed for that are the exact termini of the corridor. We have that information. Ask it to be added to the interstate system. Identify and justify the design exemptions. That's part of what was in the report. Can propose a route number for the corridor. Next slide. What may be required back to us is some additional analysis on those design exemptions, environmental clearance of the corridor. Given that the corridor is built already, I'm guessing it'd be a categorical exclusion type analysis, but obviously Federal Highway will determine that. How we address the farm gate issues, and then a public outreach effort as well, which would include adjacent jurisdictions, chambers, economic development organizations, landowners, Farm Bureau, a partnership, and other interested parties. Be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if Sarah or Stephanie have anything they want to add to this discussion as well.
This is Sarah. I don't have anything, but I appreciate all the work and updates you've been giving to us along the way. I think we have a good plan in place to approach this and move the region forward on this project, while also continuing to serve the farmers who need to use the bypass very intermittently. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything to add to this. No. Thank you, Todd.
Thanks. That's all I have, Joe. Did we lose Joe?
Sorry. I don't know. It did cut out on me.
No worries.
Thank you, Todd. We'll continue to work and get this working forward. So item number 13 is a report on water trails.
Yep. Thank you. Project's still on its original schedule. The city and design team are reviewing the design, specifically along Scott Avenue. Build grant is still being reviewed by DOT, Federal Highway. Design team is getting close to having their 60% plans completed, so that DOT can review the bid package. The 4.8 review and drill program review are starting later this month with the Corps of Engineer. Central Iowa Water Trail will be submitting a payment to the MPO for that 408 review work, which will be then forwarded to the Corps. The Corps requests funding to do that review. So Central Iowa Trails is providing it to us because the Corps sees us as, since we have the build grant, we're the designee, the funding has to come from us. So we're just being a pass through for that funding from the Central Iowa Water Trails to pay to the Corps. We've seen a lot of these dates before. Kind of the big one coming up is the preliminary design at 60%. That'll be next week. Then get check plans to DOT shortly after the first of the year. And then through the spring, finish up final plans. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions? I know we've had some lengthy discussions with the group as the city, with city staff and council members, and we're looking forward to getting the project, the Harriet and the Scott Street and Prospect off the ground and get it going. We've made a commitment to them, and we're going to keep working on getting this thing going. Item number 14 is a report on a legislative update from Dylan.
Yeah, and I don't have anything new from last time that we presented, and what we shared last time is up there on the screen, that there's been an extension of the FAST Act for a year. Otherwise, we're kind of waiting for everything to shake out with the election. Probably not going to happen for a little while. And then they'll have to pick back up the short-term budget extension through December, which could affect some build grants, but otherwise nothing new.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions? All right, item number 15 is a report on upcoming events from Gunner.
Hi, everyone. No real events to draw to your attention today. All eyeballs are on the election anyhow. So that's it from me.
All right. Item number 16 is an approval of the policy committee agenda for next Thursday, correct, Todd?
Correct.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 17 is other non-action items of interest to the committee. I think Todd has one, unless somebody else has something else. Go ahead, Todd.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to give you a couple updates on a couple things that have happened. On the screen, you see the Iowa Data Bike won one of the Smart 50 awards for the way the data bike works and the data that it's providing to our community members and the technology that it provides. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Also wanted to let everyone know that we're part of the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, and late last month, Joe won the award for Outstanding Elected Official Leadership. So congratulations to Joe.
Well, all right, Joe.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
I'm only as good as our team, and I take this as a team elected leadership, and I couldn't do it without all the folks that I'm surrounded with, and Todd and your staff do a great job, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you, your commitment to stay engaged and to keep the MPO and our region moving forward in the right direction.
Let's celebrate with some chicken spanini.
Yeah. I don't know. Take that ugly picture off the screen, Todd. I don't need to look at myself anymore.
Next slide. I also just wanted to, we talked last month about the TAP and Safe Routes to School scoring criteria and adding that into the system. And I just wanted to give you an update of the meetings we've had through last month. And then also we scheduled a meeting with the Des Moines Trail Advisory Group, or in the process of scheduling one. They haven't met since the pandemic started, but we're going to get something together with them, and there's the city staff contacts for that, and we'll bring that back next month. It is probably going to make it so we can't use this system this year. Just the timing doesn't work for when the DOT needs our information, so we'll probably end up using the old system another year.
Okay. Anything else?
Not for me.
All right. Our next meeting date is December 9th. It's our executive meeting. It's the only meeting that we have scheduled for December. It's at 11:30, and this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.